2024. I have apologies from Councillor Calicis. I can see that we have present Councillors Clark and Corbett. Councillor Cowie? No, not seeing you present. Also present today are Councillors Ferguson, McAdams, McGeever, Razak and Robb, and I'm not seeing Councillor Thompson in the meeting yet. We have a number of officers in attendance, and with that I'll pass you back to the Chair to commence today's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I start, I've asked Elizabeth Ann to have a look at the list we compiled at the start of the term and go through on that list to see what we've done and what we've not done, and if there's anything we want to add to that. So for the next meeting, if there's anything that needs to be added in, so can you just make a list of that? Firstly, many declarations of interest? No. Okay, minutes for the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6. Any questions? No. Is the minutes agreed? Agreed. Okay. 3, annual report on mainstreaming equalities and diversity, education resources, pages 7 to 22. Can I invite Karen Riley?
Hi there, thanks for inviting me today. So the report gives an update on some of our equalities work that's been taking place in education this year. And although I pull it together, it's very much tries to represent across our schools and our kind of local authority officers as well, the work that's been going on. You'll see on page 2, there are some new resources from Education Scotland that came out earlier this year on inclusion, wellbeing and equalities. And they've identified 6 areas where inequality can cause the greatest impact on wellbeing: LGBT discrimination, gender-based violence, racism, poverty, disability discrimination and care experience discrimination. So we think that's actually a really useful framework for us going forward. So we'll make, for us to base our equalities work on. So we'll be using that framework going forward, and that'll be the areas that we'll be very much focusing on. In the report this year, I've tried to give you an overview of some of the work that's going on in education. Our target for the kind of corporate mainstream equalities outcomes is about counselling through school service, that it's accessible for all children and young people aged 10 and over. And I put in one of the appendices an infographic of the work that's going on there, so you can see that over 1,400 pupils are accessing counselling. The counselling service has actually been extended, so younger children can access it now. We have funding for play therapy that's more appropriate for younger primary age children from 5 upwards. The initial counselling in the contract was talking therapy, so that's why it's not suitable for the younger ones. But you can see there's a wide range of pupils who are accessing this service, and the outcomes and the feedback from the pupils, the evaluations are generally quite good. And we had a question in advance about the measurement scale. So our psychological services team are always looking to improve the data that's collected about counselling, and so they have different scales, evaluation scales for the children to use. And they've settled on one called the Stirling Wellbeing Scale, developed by educational psychologists in Stirling for primary children, just because the language is simple and they feel it's better to get their evaluation from that. Last year, when I presented at this, I came with a teacher, Jennifer Hamilton from Straven Academy, and with 2 pupils to talk about their anti-racist work. Since then, Jennifer has actually been seconded into headquarters as a development officer, so she's taken forward her work on anti-racism this year. She developed a set of guidelines for schools on an anti-racist curriculum, how to review the curriculum and ensure that it was including a wide variety of perspectives. And that was launched earlier this year in March, and she also put on a suite of training events for teachers involving speakers and speakers that are known for their work nationally in this, just so that we could give it a really good push with our schools. And I think I included some examples. So there was a competition run by the EIS and Show Racism, the Red Card charity, and we had quite a lot of schools that were represented in that and had their work published in an online gallery. So it was good to see that obviously a lot of schools are focusing their work in anti-racism, and we'll be looking to take that forward. We now have about 13 teachers who have either completed or are signed up for the Building Racial Literacy course this year, and that's a national programme offered by Education Scotland, the national training programme, and all teachers who complete it then have to have an action plan ready for their own establishment. So we're hoping to build on the work that we've done already, and keep monitoring how we're doing in terms of anti-racist education. We also have had a look at our work supporting LGBT young people in school. Although there was some work going on in schools, we identified we needed to be a wee bit more strategic about it. And so we had a showcase event in November held in the banqueting suite by the charity TIE, which is Time for Inclusive Education. So they are the organisation that receive funding from the Scottish Government, and they produce a lot of resources around about LGBT education. It was very well attended. We had over 100 staff there from Education Resources, and they were able to go over their resources that they produce for the curriculum, and it was very positive. So prior to the event, we had almost a third of people, teachers who had responded to a survey, felt they weren't as confident as they could be in supporting LGBT young people in school, and so the evaluations from the conference were showed an improvement in that. We also, they also manage a national platform, so there's an online website for LGBT education, and there's a training module on there, an online module, and we've made that part of the mandatory training for teachers, so we're asking all teachers to complete that over the next couple of years. Following the conference that TIE put on for us, the number of teachers who had signed up to that training almost doubled, so it went from 180 up to 340 just shortly after the conference. Our psychological service team, so we have schools who have signed up for the Charter Award run by LGBT Youth Scotland. And our educational psychologists have also signed up for that award as well, so they're going to be looking a wee bit at how they can assist schools in terms of supporting young people round about this issue. So we're taking that work forward as well, and the video, hopefully if it works, so we've had a few quite complicated technical issues, but the video that I'm hoping to show you is from Hamilton Grammar, and some of their young people will talk about how they're supported. There we also have a big focus on poverty, and you'll know, so in terms of education to the Education Committee, so 3 papers have been presented this year. So a paper was presented on our anti-racist education, one on our LGBT inclusive education, and also about cost of the school day and what we're doing to tackle poverty as one of the major drivers of inequality in school. This is led by my colleagues in the curriculum service, and they organised a conference earlier this year on the cost of the school day. So trying to address all the hidden costs of sending your child to school regarding uniforms, etc. And they've put together a kind of mission statement for South Lanarkshire Council with 10 proposals, and I put that in one of the appendices as well, so that no young people are suffering inequality education due to poverty, so that school trips can be subsidised, money from the school fund or from fundraising can be used to ensure that all children can take part in them. They had a very successful conference attended by Darren McGarvey, who's well known for his work on anti-poverty and television, and both his publications as well. And all our schools now have a position statement on the cost of the school day and trying to reduce the costs involved in education. So we've got some very, very good examples of work. James 8 in primary, for example, I was there just before the summer, and they received £1,000 worth of funding from NISA, the NISA chain of shops, and they have a help yourself and bring shed that sits just outside the school, and so they're going to use that money to create a kind of food bank, but also increase their baby supplies, nappies, baby wipes, things that are quite expensive for parents. So any parents who are finding things difficult financially will be able to be assisted that way. We also have many of our schools have uniform banks, but we also, Curluke High School had set up a kind of prom outfit bank as well, so recognising that's a big expense. for families, and many people are buying a dress or a suit and only wearing it once, so they're in very good condition. So there's all sorts of creative ways that our schools are trying to reduce the cost out there for our families and help tackle the impact of poverty. We also have children and young people with disability and autism. So we do have a lot of specialist provision within South Lanarkshire Council. We have our standalone schools, and we also have our ESN bases within primary and secondary schools. So we had several inspections this year, and we highlighted some very, very good practice in Robert Owen Memorial Primary School, Greenhills Primary and Carstairs Junction Primary. We have a big focus on trying to develop our use of AAC, which is alternative and augmentative communication. So we know our reports keep telling us that there are lots of children with speech and language issues, particularly since COVID, and that when children start in primary one, their language skills maybe aren't as developed as we would like, they have been in the past, and so always communicating verbally isn't perhaps the best way. So we have a big focus on trying to use visuals, visual timetables for pupils, but we're also looking at other forms of technology. So I'd mentioned some there. We had some funding available at the end of the year, so we were able to purchase more devices for schools. A Go Talk, so that's like a little plastic board, and you can put in 12 pictures, or you can record sounds as well. So if a child's struggling with language, then they can point to a symbol for the toilet, a snack, a drink, hello, goodbye. But the sound can be recorded as well if they find it difficult to use language in context, or a teacher could record those sounds of the child. So we're trying to find a way for every child to have a voice, which is a big part of the UNCRC as well. So we're hoping to take that forward. As well, we've set up an inclusion hub online on Glow, which is trying to collect all our resources and training together in one place. So it's a one-stop shop for schools and staff. And that's all our training on autism, disability, additional support needs, and our equalities materials as well. And we're looking at increasing our own training offer. We've put out an audit to staff as well, asking what training they would like, where they think their gaps in knowledge are, and we're using that to take forward our own training programme. Next year, we are also starting off the term. We've accessed some resources from NATE, the National Autism Implementation Team, that we will be delivering to primary one teachers. We'll be offering them to primary one teachers. And we'll put that offer out next week, and we'll deliver. There's 2 sessions in that, and we'll deliver at the start of September. Quite often, primary one teachers may be probation teachers, so we're trying to get in there early and offer that training. And then I'd also put in a spotlight on Gaelic education, because we get a lot of inquiries to the Equalities Forum about Gaelic, and it is a growing sector, and there's a lot of good work going on, and we maybe don't publicise enough the kind of work that's going on there. So we have Gaelic education unit at Mount Cameron Primary, and we also have some secondary available at Calder Glen. At Mount Cameron, the school's expanding. It's going from 64 to 75 pupils. The deputy head at Calder Glen is now the lead for the authority, and so the 2 schools are working together very closely to improve the offer there. They offer Gaelic as a qualification at Calder Glen, but this year they've been able to offer some classes in Gaelic actual subjects at Broad General Education. And there's now an early years worker in place as well, so that there can be immersive Gaelic, they call it, so someone can speak in Gaelic to the children when they're at nursery as well. And probably the biggest success this year has been setting up the Parent Council and trying to build up the Gaelic medium education community in South Lanarkshire. And they've put on a mod, they've had a Ceilidh. They're trying to create opportunities for the children to use the Gaelic, not just in school, but outside the school as well. And that work is led by Donna MacDonald, who's the deputy head at Calder Glen, and she'll be continuing with that this year. And so we've got lots of work in lots of different channels. So our next step will be to look at those 6 areas that were identified by Education Scotland and look at how we're taking the work forward. There we have funding from the Scottish Government for training school support staff, and that's was an outcome of the behaviour summits that were held by Jerry Goruth before Christmas. Each school was given a wee bit of funding, so we have organised some in-service training on the 3 in-service days, November, February and May, for our school support staff. And we're producing a folder, a resource folder, again, where we're gathering all our materials together on our promoting positive relationships and understanding distressed behaviour framework for schools and additional training. We're continuing to develop our equality section that's online, so we really want that to be a one-stop shop for schools. So in terms of LGBT inclusive education, anti-racist education, so there's a site they can go to easily. They're not having to spend a lot of time looking for resources. We'll collect that all together for them. We are going to have a priority this year on gender-based violence. There's obviously been a lot of discussion in the news regarding that. There is a programme for schools called Mentors in Violence Prevention, and we'll hear a wee bit from Hamilton Grammar about that programme. And it's a training programme for senior pupils, and they deliver it to younger pupils in the school, and it's based very much on be an upstander, not a bystander, and so helping pupils to challenge some of the language maybe they see round about them in schools. So the training had kind of slipped a little bit from COVID, but we just trained a new cohort of staff. We've got almost 30 teachers trained. Glasgow City Council gave us some training places on one of their courses as well, which is very helpful. So we'll be doing a kind of push. We'll be setting up a network for schools so that we can share good practice and look at the delivery model in that. We'll continue to build our capacity in schools. So in terms of additional support needs and children with disabilities, we know the numbers are increasing, and we need to look at the universal practice that's an offer to our children within mainstream schools. So we'll continue to do that. And our focus, obviously, with the UNCRC being now made into law in Scotland. We're looking at how we take that forward, and we're trying to tie things together because some of the equalities work. So one of the articles in the UNCRC is children have the right to be free from discrimination, and that's Article 2. So we have people working in that, and we're just looking at making sure that we're kind of joining our work up together in terms of UNCRC and the equalities work. And then we'll continue on the development of Gaelic medium education as well. So that's just there's a lot going on to gather up, but that's an overview of some of the work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I was going to say that I'm really pleased to see that the Thai training has been virtually doubled, which is excellent news. Page 17, the chart you've got, I'm concerned about the fact that 64% of the pupils that attended counselling were female. That seems to be quite a substantial percentage.
Yeah, I think that's.
Sorry,
Hi, yeah, thanks for your question. So I think that it's maybe not uncommon. I think that would probably be replicated in other local authorities as well. So it may be that girls are more likely to request counselling or to be aware of it or to agree to take part in it as well. It is token therapy, and so sometimes you find it's not for everyone that is over 10, and so sometimes you may find pupils who go, particularly at secondary level, and don't complete all the sessions. And I would imagine that may be some of the boys who find it very difficult to talk in an environment with someone that they don't know. So I think that it may be that girls are just actually more keen to accept help or to accept the referral and the service that's on offer, and it may be actually it's more of a worry for the boys that they're not maybe coming forward for that sort of help, or they don't think it would be beneficial to them at that age.
Okay. Looking at it and then looking at the reason for counselling, it says anxiety, family issues, and relationship, friendship, and behaviour, emotional seem to be, you know, the headline, especially anxiety. That's at the 600 mark. So I'd probably be asked that. I understand the work he's doing is excellent, so I don't think for a minute I don't appreciate it, but could extra work be done on the anxiety side of it? Is it possible to get extra work or have a look at the anxiety side of it? Because, and you are right about boys. Boys tend to be more insular and they tend not to ask for help. So, if anxiety is one of the big reasons for counselling, is it possible to do extra work so that even though they're not asking for help, that there's a bit of understanding for them?
Yep, definitely, because it is a big issue. So we have our educational psychologists just now are looking at putting together some help for schools on emotionally based school avoidance, because quite often anxiety is manifesting itself through poor attendance. So I think if you look at Scotland as a whole, particularly since the pandemic, the attendance figures have taken a drop. At secondary, but we're now seeing more primary children who are very anxious and who are not leaving the house or not able to come to school. So the psychologist and my colleague who manage the counselling service, they're trying to make sure that counselling is available online. So if somebody can't really access it within the school premises, then it can be accessed online. So psychology services are working on resources specific to anxiety around about school attendance and finding it difficult to come into school. And I think we do have some work going on in our secondaries through the Community Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund, which is in partnership with SAMH, the Scottish Association for Mental Health. So they have a Connect 2 programme, kind of for peer support as well, that we've got in secondary schools. We also have access to COOTH, which is the online support module as well. So it is a big issue, and that's why the counselling, obviously in terms of CAMS is now a service for moderate to severe learning difficulties. So the counselling funding is trying to get that early intervention in there. But I don't, there's always more that could be done. I think it'll be something that we really need to focus on. We also have an awareness of anxiety, particularly within our children with autism, regarding the school environment, peer relationships and how it's likely to manifest them. So we've got, one of my colleagues is on the autism strategy group, so we're always looking at that as well and trying to be aware and make sure we've got resources and support available for schools for that in particular.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Also, just to add to that, I think within the schools there is such an infrastructure in schools, and it's very layered just in terms of the different elements to that in terms of offering support. So you were seeing some of that through the references to psychologists, the work around autism, the work around providing support through pupil support. You'll see on page 17 as well in terms of the range of onward referrals. So what you're seeing are these onward referrals in relation to this service, but there are many referrals relating to other services that take place in school. And it's very tailored and targeted, but I think that gives you a flavour of the wraparound care. I think schools particularly are acutely aware in terms of anxiety, mental health, suicide awareness, particularly in boys and young men. I know that there's been a number of events that have been targeted around delivering support within schools, but also to teaching staff to equip them better to deal with these things, because they're seeing them on a daily basis as well. So I think that's a really, really good flavour of all the work that is taking place, but there are so many other things that are obviously happening in school. But what we can probably pick up is maybe when we come back and present some more information, is pick up some more of that kind of range of wellbeing activity that take place in school, just to support pupils and young people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bert? Oh, sorry, Ross.
Not a problem. More so comments rather than questions. More so to welcome the report and thank you for the detailed explanation of it. Certainly, lots of good stuff in it, lots of good progress, and obviously actions to build on that progress. It's good to see a mention of gender-based violence in it, and how we're trying to weave that into our education and the overall aim to not just tackle it but eradicate it. Lots of good information on the access to kind of counselling services and a good breakdown there. Obviously, when we move forward, we'll obviously look at ways to widen access, and also coming from the chair's question there, how we encourage more boys to access this service, how to make them feel more comfortable speaking about whatever's bothering them. I know there's a wider campaign there, but obviously there can be work undertaken in our schools. And a good attitude in the report, of course, of feedback from our own processes and what we can do in future. For example, like the Inclusion Hub mentioned, it said that 70% said they prefer accessing these resources online. So there's lots of stuff to learn from that going forward. And just specifically, I'd like to welcome the schools there in the LGBT section, which are working towards their charter accreditation. It's good to see Larkhall Academy in my own ward working towards that, and I wish all the schools there all the best in doing that. But it's good to see that progress going forward and building what we've already been doing. I think particularly the anti-racist education's probably became even more so important in the last few days with the scenes that we've seen across the UK, and the amount of misinformation and stuff that's out there. If if we educate from an early age, we can try and help prevent some of that stuff from occurring. So, but I know we're all aware of that. But again, it's good to highlight that, to make sure we have a focus on it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Bert?
Very much, Chair. Apologies for being late. I think my colleague spoke well there, and yourself. Young people are very current. They know what's happening, and they know about coming out of COVID, Ukraine unrest, racial unrest, and that, and they're all very current and very prominent. And it's not just it's their whole family, their whole social life, their whole working life. Everything's affected, and I think we must be looking harder and keep on trying to alleviate all their anxieties, because without that, the quality of life is certainly affected. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Bert. And Monique?
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you, basically, for the report. I felt it was very thorough, and it basically cleared up a lot of questions that I wanted to ask. But then as I was reading it, I was like, this is great, it's answering it. There was a couple of things, though. I wanted to touch on what Councillor Clark was talking about there to do with the gender-based violence. I agree with him. I think with everything that's been happening lately, I do think that that's something that we maybe need to take on as an extra issue, so that we can be preventative, so that we're being active rather than reactive. So I agree with Councillor Clark in that. I think that's a very sensible point that he made, and definitely one that I would support. The other thing I just wanted to ask a couple of questions on, Chair, was it was to do with point 3.6, point 3.11 and 5.1. So I'll just give the questions. On point 3.6, I wanted to ask with regards to the evaluations. It was actually something Councillor Loudon had actually touched on this morning at the executive, and I felt it was a valid point that she brought up when she was talking about the consultation that had got done in education, and how the children, the school children, were asked to input, quite rightly, as they should. I know Katie agreed with that as well. But it was just, she had pointed out that there had been feedback that the children, basically, when they had been going through it, were basically some typing yes, some no, and then making contradictory statements. So what I just wanted to check was, see, with regards to this for 3.6, have we made sure that it's not a tick box exercise in some of the schools, and that definitely that we have got exactly the opinion of what the pupils actually do think. And that the other thing Katie mentioned that I didn't actually realise was the children were given the same forms as the adults, but obviously it's like, there's a gap in understanding there for something that might be easy enough for an adult to grasp. It's not necessarily going to be so easy for a child. So did we, for the evaluations, did we make sure that they were like children friendly, i.e. young adult friendly, because I think that's important. So that's one question. The next one was for 3.11 to do with the inclusive practice. I wondered if, and I apologise in case this has been done when I was off ill, but I wanted to ask about the leaflets. So one of the things that came off before or had come up when we were, it wasn't on this forum, it was on the one, and Mo, Chair, you'll need to help me with the name of it. It was the one that was taken to committee, and it was like a working group that was put together, and it was to help combat people that were not getting treated as fairly as what they should have, and it wasn't fully inclusive. So at that committee, it was brought up that we didn't have leaflets in different languages for our school users and their parents. And I just wanted to know if we had managed to move forward in that to make sure that we actually were being fully inclusive, so that everybody did actually have a good understanding for, you know, things from filling in what their dinner requirements were to actually what the rules of the school were. And so the final thing was on the reporting system for 5.1. I just wanted to ask if this had been remedied while I was off, that we were going to start logging when basically there had been racist behaviour, that it didn't just get put down as bullying, which obviously it is bullying of a type, but let's just call a spade a spade. Racism's racism. So
Councillor McAdams. We've lost Councillor McAdams.
Okay.
Could you maybe?
Okay, the questions were, I'm just going.
I think Councillor McAdams wants
Yeah.
to come back in.
Okay.
We lost her.
apologise, Chair. I don't know what I did wrong. My internet must have dropped. So the last one was, is racism now getting logged as racism? And are we giving the teachers the support so that they feel confident enough to be able to do that? Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. I'll invite Canon shortly. Just in terms of touching on some of the points that have been raised. So obviously this morning there was the consultation that was being referred to was in relation to school transportation. So the consultation that's been referred to in this document is slightly different, but Canon will be able to provide a wee bit more information on that. In terms of the comments about 3.11 in terms of inclusive education working group and leaflets in different languages, what we can maybe do is get some more information on that from you. We'll try and get to the specific point that you were talking about, and we'll be able to respond to that, no bother. But I know that the schools do work hard in terms of inclusivity, in terms of the children, in terms of their parents, young people, to make sure they're as involved and included in all of the activities and communications. In terms of the last bit, it might touch on two areas, so it's really just to check. So there are two ways the incidents in schools can be reported. So it's through CMIS, so some of that might be just that activity related to school, child protection incidents, etc., the type of incidents that happen. And also we pick them up through the health and safety system, and we're just going to be launching a new version of the health and safety system. And we are working closely with resources, and particularly education resources, to look at incidents in schools and how they are recorded, and we are looking at different categorisations in there to make sure that we capture that appropriately. So that will certainly be picked up in the work that we do through there, but I'll hand you over to Karen in case she's wanting to add anything else to that.
Okay.
That's me green. Yeah, sure, no problem, Councillor McAdams. So in terms of the first question with regarding the evaluation, I suppose the general point is now with the UNCRC, we do need to ensure that if we've got any policies, there needs to be a child-friendly version of them. So some of our schools are already very good at that. So they have the School Improvement Plan, which is a big kind of very wordy document that the head teachers shared with the heads of service, but they usually have a parent-friendly one and a pupil-friendly one. So there's some very good examples out in West Mains Primary, one of our ESN schools. They have their school improvement plan with board makers, so they would have symbols so the children were able to understand it as well. In terms of these particular evaluations for counselling, I did touch on that a wee bit earlier, but our educational psychologists have spent a long time trying to select the best measurement tool for pupils to fill in. So that the Stirling Wellbeing Scale, they selected that intentionally for primary school children. It was developed for children aged 5 and up. The questions, there are 12 questions, and it's a 5-point scale, so children can fill in, I am feeling calm. I think, you know, I feel good about myself. The language is quite simple, and they do that before and after a block of counselling. So they've selected that especially for primary schools. They're using a different, and there is then also, just to triangulate that data, there's a strengths and difficulties questionnaire that the parents and school would fill in. So the adults have a different evaluation scale. And at secondary, they used to use the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, but they've changed to something called YP Core, and that can be filled in after every session, because part of the issue with counselling services in secondary is that because of the children's maybe different lifestyle or attendance at school, they maybe don't complete the whole block, so they can fill in after every session now, so they can get an idea of how it is. So they have been carefully selected by the psychological services team to be suitable for each age group. In terms of the leaflets in different languages, so we do have an EL team. We've got a team of teachers for pupils and families with English as an additional language. So I can find out for you what we have in terms of actual leaflets, but we do have a contract with a couple of translation services, so schools can ask for documents to be translated, and they're also very good at hiring translators for meetings with parents as well. So, for example, I attended a meeting in the school holidays with an educational psychologist and a parent who's Russian, and we were able to get a Russian translator in place for that. So if somebody started in a school who was new and who didn't have much English, school should be able to ask, do we need a translator there? And they would have a translator to run over documents. A lot of parents themselves use Google Translate, so a lot of parents will ask schools to text or email them, and then they'll put it through Google Translate themselves. So parents are able to use that. But in terms of what we have in actual leaflets, I can certainly find out for you from the EL team. And in terms of gender-based, in terms of racism, yes, so we have, or the guidance from Education Scotland is that all incidents of bullying and inequalities incidents are recorded on CMIS, and there's a bullying inequalities module. So last year when I looked at it, our recording was inconsistent. I think we had 248 incidents of bullying recorded across the authority, and it just seemed very low. It wasn't that they weren't being recorded, the schools were using different systems. So we've had a big push on this year that everything's recorded on the bullying inequalities module. And I can see from that, I just looked at it last week, there's been 158 racist incidents logged. Now, it's not perfect because that's logging racist incidents between pupils. It's not necessarily a negative thing that there's been an increase. There's been an increase because we've been very firm with schools that it must be recorded, and that what was happening previously was sometimes head teachers were saying, oh, well, they didn't mean it. This child doesn't have awareness of language. So we've tried to be quite firm to say it needs to be recorded anyway. And it may be that a child doesn't realise maybe they're too young, or maybe there's a cognitive difficulty. They don't realise the impact of what they're saying, but that will be recorded further down the incident sheet in terms of the outcome for that and what's done about it. But we need to know how many are happening. So we've got 158, so I'll be able to look into that and see is there a lot happening in a particular school or a particular area, so we can try and make sure that we're targeting resources there. It's not what there used to be a module in CMIS called racist incidents, where racist incidents called staff could be recorded and maybe graffiti. So there's an awareness nationally, and that module was retired when the bullying and inequalities module came into being about 2019, 2020. However, there has been a realisation nationally that there is a wee gap with that. So it will capture a racist comment or behaviour from one pupil or a group of pupils to another. But maybe there are incidents where there's not a clear perpetrator. So if it's a comment say, shouted on a school bus towards people sitting at the front and they can't see, there's maybe a gap there, and there might be a gap round about if there's a piece of racist graffiti in a school and there's not a clear victim. So that's been looked at nationally. It also is not great for recording racist incidents towards staff. It can be put on there, but it's very difficult for us to extrapolate that. So members of school staff would record it on the violence incident forum, which Michelle was talking about. It would be down as an incident of verbal abuse. However, that doesn't have a clear drop-down menu to filter out, is it racist? We would be able to read through it and see it, but it would be quite time-consuming. But I know there are ongoing discussions, as Michelle's highlighted, and that's on the corporate recording system, so that's actually across all departments. It's not just education. It's actually very difficult for South Lanarkshire Council to capture, is there a racist incident against a member of staff in any department. So I know that certainly the EIS union have suggested that when the system's updated, that there is a drop-down menu, so that it's easier for us to extrapolate that information. We can get it just now. We would look at the number of verbal abuse incidents and we'd be able to read through them and see if any were racist, but it's not ideal. So there is a gap there. So what's happening nationally is that the anti-bullying guidance, Respect for All, has been updated. That's by the charity or the organisation Respect Me, they're Scotland's National Anti-Bullying Service. They're updating theirs. They're anticipating that will be ready kind of end of this year or early into 2025. As part of that, they're looking at racism specifically because, like Monique said, not all incidents of racism are bullying. Sometimes it's just out and out racism. Sometimes it's verging on a criminal offence. So there has been an acknowledgement nationally that racism's been kind of subsumed under the heading of bullying, and it's not ideal. So the anti-bullying guidance, the updated guidance will come out, but I think for racist comments and racist incidents, there'll be a separate part of guidance or a separate supplement as part of that. So when that's released, we'll then go back and we'll review our own guidance in the light of that. So we're waiting on further information, but we are really impressing on schools the importance of recording. So we had, like I said, last year we had 248 incidents of bullying recorded, and this year we've got 775. It doesn't mean that there's more, it means that we've improved the recording of it, so we now have a better idea of what issues there are in our schools, what prejudice-based bullying there are, and where we need to put our resources in. So we're going to keep with that, updating schools and reminding them that this is what they need to do. It's also part of their inspection as well, so when HMI come in, so last year, for example, Stonelaw High School had 55 bullying incidents recorded, and that was a lot more than any other school. When they were inspected, it wasn't seen as a negative, it was seen as actually it was good practice, and they were being very thorough and they were ensuring everything was recorded. Following their inspection, which was very good, HMI actually went back to Stonelaw to do a case study, and they published it in Good Practice on anti-bullying guidance within Scotland. So we've got the message across to teachers, because there's a bit of trepidation with head teachers. What if there's an increase in my bullying statistics from one year to the next? But we've said, well, we would support that, obviously. If there's any questions, we'll make clear it's because we've improved the recording system, and that we're really asking for people to be very thorough in the recording so we can have an idea of what the problems are.
Okay.
Chair, can I ask something else, please?
Yes, on you go, Monique.
It was just to say to Michelle, thank you very much. I did know that it was a different survey, just in case you thought I was thinking it was about the bus consultation. So I did know it was a different survey, but thank you for clearing that up. And then it was just to say to Karen, I mean, the report you've done is fantastic. And also everything that you've just said there is fantastic. I don't think there being an increase in the figures, like you've said, means that we've now got this problem that we didn't have before. I just think that we're now getting more accurate recording, which is great. It's not great, if you know what I mean, because it means that, there are the incidents there, but for the fact that we've got an accurate, it's becoming more accurate, means that we'll then be able to work out if there is any problem areas, and it's just about educating people. my good friend, the chair Mo, explained to me the difference between ignorance and racism. When we first started to talk, and he explained to me that it's only racist if you say it and you mean it. If you say something racist, but you didn't realise it was racist, or you didn't understand the impact, as long as when it was pointed out to you, and you then knew that you were coming from a place of ignorance, as long as you then realised that, then that's the difference between ignorance and racism. And I think it's about people not being scared that if they get something wrong, that it's okay, but you just then need to obviously learn from it. I also think that with regards to the racist incidents on staff, I think for us to protect our teachers, I think the union, the EIS union is completely correct, and I think we definitely need to have that drop down, and I think it is definitely something that we definitely want to do, because I know from an incident that I had before in one of the schools, I know that there was trepidation, and it was like people were worried about doing the wrong thing. So I think the more support we can give our teachers and our head teachers, and the greater education that we can have for our children, I just think it's such a positive thing, and I think that was a great report, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yes, thanks. It was just a quick comment to say thank you to Councillor McAdams. In terms of the transport consultation, I was conscious that Karen hadn't been at the meeting this morning, so it was just to kind of flag that so there was no confusion just in terms of discussing that. But thank you very much.
Okay. I was going to ask a question about the staff abuse. So I take it there's no drop-down box just now. So I take it then if it's homophobic abuse, then that wouldn't be reported either. Then that would need to be done as well then.
Yeah, so what that would come up as that staff members are able to report incidents of verbal abuse. So there's called violence towards staff. So there are different categories that you can select for that, and one of them is verbal abuse. However, it doesn't allow you to subdivide down.
Understand.
We would read it. One of my colleagues reads all those violent incident reports, and they are sent out to the head teachers of the school, and if there's an increase in incidents, then an officer would be copied in as well. So we would see it reading through it, but it wouldn't be an easy way for us to get an overview of how many of those verbally abusive incidents were racist, how many were homophobic, how many were prejudice based on disability or religion or anything else. And I think that's probably, everyone's in agreement, that's probably where the next stage for the corporate health and safety system needs to develop. It's just that's a different area, a different kind of IT system, but hopefully that's what we would get to. Just for every department, it wouldn't just be for education, but for all departments within the council as well. So it could be in housing, could be frontline services as well.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm just going to close this, then we'll go for a break, because I think the hour's nearly up. To see that, I think what we've noticed just now out there, what's happening out there, especially with what's happening in the Olympics and also what's happening out there in the UK, shows you that there is a problem. There's a problem out there, either as people with issues with LGBT and people with issues with anyone of colour or immigrants. And it's good to see the school is taking the lead on a lot of the work that they're doing. And I'd say congratulations for that. And I'm really pleased to see that we're in the front foot. Thank you. So we'll take a 10-minute break? 5-minute break, sorry. We'll take a 5-minute break, then we will start back at 3:05. Okay, thank you. Okay,
Perfect.
can the forum note that presentation, the report?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 4, Hamilton Grammar School, respect, equality, diversity and inclusion in our school. Can I ask Karen to speak about this?
Yes, thanks. So last year I was able to bring pupils from Stephen Academy with me, but we're still in the school holidays. So we've got Hamilton Grammar to make a video. It involves a couple of staff members and some of their senior pupils, and they're going to just talk a wee bit about what's written down in the report about how they support pupils in school. So they were our first secondary school to get their national anti-bullying award from Respect Me, and what was highlighted through that award was their really good work in terms of equality and diversity. They've had a really good PSE programme where they really, for second years, where they cover different diversities, different protected characteristics. And so we thought we'd get some of the young people to tell you themselves about the work they're doing and how the senior pupils in the school are role modelling and helping the younger pupils.
Here in Hamilton Grammar, we are entirely committed to ensuring that all young people feel included in their school life, that they feel safe, valued and respected, and have a positive day-to-day experience in line with our ethos and core values. Indeed, two of our core values are equality and inclusion. Recently, we've invested quite a lot of time and commitment on recreating key policy documents in school, including our attachment policy, our relationships policy and our positive behaviour policy. So I think the application for the Respect Me Award was really just to seek accreditation and recognition for the work that we're doing in the school on a day-to-day basis, and just to recognise our fundamental core values as a school.
We got the Respect Me Award, we're one of the first schools in the country to get that. That means a lot to everyone who's worked so hard on it. But I think sometimes once you're working on getting something like that, or a big achievement, you can forget it's the day-to-day interactions that you don't give yourself enough credit for. Like, so many people's companies, groups, and who interact with all the supports we've got available. It makes such a big difference to their lives, and it's the small, quiet differences that happen every single day of somebody coming to school and feeling supported and feeling held and feeling seen, or even feeling that that support is there, even if you don't use it. That, to me, is the real benefit of this, is creating a culture of acceptance that causes the norm. We support these pupils, and we hear it from the pupils every day, we hear it from the parents at parents' nights or information meetings, or parents contact the school just to say thank you for helping our child through a difficult time. For me, that's the biggest one, a culture of inclusion and diversity and openness, and people feel safe, held and respected for who they are.
I think that Hamilton Grammar School really does have a sort of open arms to all students, and they don't judge anyone, and there's a lot of things in place like the LGBTQ club to make people feel like included and feel seen and know that there's other people that are like them and they're not alone, and no one will judge them.
The school offers what would be the PSE, where there's commonly like talks and lessons about violence, gender identity, sexual orientation, or like social issues like that. And I really think it helps even people's understanding of supporting one another, and it helps with like the stigma, and it helps people finding their voice and feel more included and supported at school.
We have many youth sports in our school, and it is, as I said, personally, it's so valuable to me to know that I'm included and respected from what I'm school. And that is something that I could probably live on with it. As much as we move forward in society in terms of legalise marriage and so on and so forth in our partnerships, there's still many areas that we lack in society. This shows the economic sense of groups and supports that are available to people.
MDP is Mentors and Violence Prevention, and it's a programme that we have been running in the school for several years now. Our S6 pupils have been trained up and they then deliver this training to our S1 pupils. Training is all about gender-based violence, and through this we are trying to tackle gender-based stereotypes and also work in trying to prevent violence against women. I think the MVP training is something that is so valuable, and I do think when we rolled it out to the pupils and offered it to them, they did have a really genuine interest in it. And again, I think it's something with gender-based violence and breaking those gender stereotypes is something that is so important in a school setting. And again, the fact that it is delivered by peers, it's not pupils just listening to teachers. They are listening to other pupils that are older, that maybe been through these things that they are going through.
Have seen and I've experienced bullying myself. I've seen how the school helps, and that's what inspired me to become an MVP, because I want to help other people, I want to help younger people realise that they have someone to talk to, they don't have to keep it to themselves.
Since I was at school, you look at S6 and you think, oh, that's what I want to be. Nobody wants to be a teacher, they want to be the cool older kid. And if that cool older kid is talking to you about inequality or gender, things that you're comfortable talking about, things that maybe we're not used to, if somebody you respect is talking about that, then, and actually challenging your behaviour, maybe beliefs that you have, then I think that's where the real impact can happen.
Having pupils to talk to kind of takes it the stress away. Lots talking to an adult or someone authority. I feel like if they can speak to more of a peer, they feel more comfortable sharing and less like they're telling on someone.
Pupil voice in any situation, whether it be inequality, diversity, race, gender, sexuality, anything, we want the input from the pupils as much as possible. We need that, and that shapes our message, it shapes our where we focus our time and our money and our efforts. If the pupils tell us something, we need to listen. That's really the key for change, I think, is listening to the pupils.
It's when you stop moving forward is when things start to fall behind. Things are always evolving, things are always changing. I think as far as the school goes, we are very advanced in our anti-bullying methods and the supports available. But I think we always need to keep up to date with them and always adapt and change it with the environment that we live in.
Okay. Any questions? No. I'm really impressed with the video. It's a very good video, and I think hats off to the school and Hamilton and Stephen Cahill's a man from Blantyre as well, teacher from Blantyre. I recognised him right away, so it's good to see a Blantyre boy doing well. But I'm really impressed with it, and I think that it's a great showcase, and hopefully other schools will take this up as well.
I think you would see a similar picture in most of our schools. I think young people there's so much bad publicity about teenagers, violence in the community, etc. But we've got some fantastic young people in our schools that are very mature, and schools are tapping into the senior pupils in terms of leadership roles, equalities leads, mentors in violence prevention, and how they can set an example for the younger pupils. And that was a good example. That's only a few pupils, but there are many more pupils that are trained the same way. So I think in most of our schools you would find a similar picture in terms of the supports available.
Not totally agree. I think when you look at the younger generation, I don't have that opinion that things have got worse. They've got a lot better. They understand health a lot better, and you know they look at their diet and everything else, and they're a lot wiser than when I was at school anyway. So I'm really impressed, and this shows you just how far we've travelled from the bad days of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and to where we've got to now. So congratulations for that. Okay, for this forum to note the presentation.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Okay, and agenda item 4, Lanarkshire.
Sorry, that's my number.
Sorry?
It's number 5, that's my mistake.
Okay, sorry, it's number 5 because it's 2 number 4s. Lanarkshire British Sign Language Plan 2018 to 24 update. Can I ask Alison Bell to speak on?
Thank you, Chair. Would just like to bring to you the progress report and the draft local plan for the BSL going forward. This is the second BSL plan that we have put together in conjunction with NHS Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire and South Lanarkshire, and we have been very much driven by the BSL steering group in the content of our plan. So this is the second one that we have done. We have to do this by law. It's part of legislation. However, it's very good practice to be doing this. Now, this is a high-level plan that we've put together here, and we will be moving on to do a much more local plan that's for South Lanarkshire specifically going forward. So I'm just going to take you through some of the content of the report. I'm not going to go through the whole lot. As you can see, and as I've said, 3.2, this is the second plan, and it comes on the back of the Scottish National Plan, which was published in November 2023. We had a very tight deadline to publish a local plan this time around. We had to have it done and ready for publication by the end of May. So it was, for us, not so much of a challenge because we have been in constant contact with the steering group that was set up for the first plan. So we were really continuing going through with what was being required. So as you can see in 3.4, as a specified local authority, we have a duty under the Act to publish the plan. And as I say, we managed to publish it just about within the deadline. It was a couple of days late, but we did get it there. So as you can see in section 4, our progress on the shared plan, and I don't intend to go through all this because we have done quite a lot of work between the first plan at 2018 right through to 24. You'll see this plan is slightly different because it's a 6-year plan. Most of the other ones are either 5 or 7, but this one for some reason is 6. So you can see at 4.2 the membership of the steering group, and there's just one update to that. The Lanarkshire Deaf Club have now renamed and they are now called the Lanarkshire Deaf Hub as opposed to the Lanarkshire Deaf Club. So, but they're still exactly the same people coming along and giving us their thoughts and their experiences so that we can move forward with our plan. So the steering group is very much involved in the development of the plan. We do take a lead from the steering group. We make sure, well, they make sure that our plans are going to be realistic and accessible. So they very much drive the plan going forward. At 4.7, you can see that work has been ongoing within South Lanarkshire to support the long-term goals that were mentioned in the first Lanarkshire plan, and the progress has been made in the following areas. So we've had a service review which has taken place, and Karen has spoken about this previously, service review in schools to establish sort of like the best and most cost-effective means of supporting young people with BSL. We have provided support to South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture to facilitate signed theatre performances, and we are just currently having a video pulled together for the pantos that will be coming up in December, so that will be going on the SLLC website. There has been more BSL content that's been incorporated into the SLC website. Now, while that's a good thing, the feedback that we get from the BSL community is that sometimes it's a wee bit difficult to find. So what we've done to try to head that off is that we've introduced a button onto the council website, which if you click on that button, it's BSL and it will take you to all the BSL content. So we've tried to make it a bit easier there. But again, we will be taking continual feedback from the steering group and other members of the community as to whether or not that works. The other thing we need to be aware of is that not all BSL users will access technology There are a lot of people who don't like to use technology and prefer face-to-face interactions. So that's something going forward in our plan that we'll need to consider. So as you can see at 5.1, the second shared plan, it's attached at Appendix 1. So I'm not going to go through all of that unless there's any questions on that. The plan that we have done, it mirrors the national plan because it is a strategic, it's a higher level plan than when we get down to the local one. The priorities are shown at 5.1, and we have included the Scottish National Plan priorities into the Lanarkshire Shared Plan. So they're all shown at paragraph 5.4. We did a shared BSL plan, and the rationale for that is shown in section 6. And you can see at 6.3 the benefits of the plan. For both councils and the NHS, we know that there is a shared commitment. There is already a strong engagement with the communities who use BSL, and having that support and expertise and working together means that we don't have to go out to the BSL community 3 times and ask them the same questions. So there is that benefit that's there. The plan was done.
That's my fault, apologies.
Oh, was oh, sorry, I've been cut off. The plan was done, as I say, in consultation and engagement. It was a process that we went through, and we needed to go through it very quickly because of the deadlines for publishing. But we will be doing further consultation and further engagement with the steering group and the wider community. So the next steps for us is to take the plan down to a much more local level, to set up a working group specifically for South Lanarkshire to go through and look to see what the community are looking for. I attended a Scottish Parliament consultation event yesterday, and it was very interesting, the feedback which we can use in our plan that was provided to Scottish Parliament for their plan. And a lot of the feedback that was given was that we rely too heavily on technology. We don't do enough face-to-face. Officers and elected members are a bit, and this is the words of the feedback from the community, is that they're a bit scared to engage. And the reason for that is because they don't really know who to talk to or how to talk to them. And also from the other side is that we find there's a reluctance from officers and politicians to engage with people with BSL because they're not very sure what it is and how to do that as well. So that is something that really came through quite strongly. So we'll have to look at that and see how we can actually bring that into our plan. So the next meeting of the steering group is on the 21st of August. And at that point, we hope to have some kind of local plan ready to take to them for comment. That's really all I want to highlight to you here. As you can see, Appendix 1, the plan is there. It is a strategic, it is high level, but we will be coming back probably with a much more focused South Lanarkshire view on the BSL plan, taking that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant?
The interpreter to come in. Oh, here we go.
Okay. Bruce is in as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just want to comment. I want to thank Alison for the report. Really happy to see that the work that you're doing with the deaf community as well, and I think it's really important that continues. With regards to the report, and I haven't had a read of it, I just want to make a comment, actually, if that's all right. On, I think it's page 33, item number 5, it's on the third bullet point down, where it states maximising the availability of BSL interpreters and deafblind guide communicators, as this is a finite resource. Now, I think, having had a look at that, I don't think that's overly helpful towards the deaf community, as this is, as you said, it's a limited accessibility as default. Now, hearing pupils can change the criteria by studying the SQA BSL qualifications at, I think, primary and secondary school, which will then, I think, lead the way to increase the number of BSL interpreters and deafblind guides. But the availability will eventually increase over the years. Now, I do understand that the BSL plan, I think, is more fitted to deaf and deafblind communities, but I was a little bit disappointed to hear about the numbers taking up the SQA and BSL qualifications from last year. Now, I was approached by another councillor who attended a parents' evening and had advised that the head of education and the parents there, who had not heard about the SQA BSL qualifications that were being made available to them. Now, the pupil was disappointed to miss out on this. However, I think to increase the BSL interpreters and the deafblind guides, it's essential. I think it's quite essential that the terms of communication, accessibility and participation is to have a proper, I think, to cascade that from education heads to all schools in South Lanarkshire to promote the qualifications, the SQA and BSL qualifications to the pupils, which will then, I think, ensure an uptake in the qualifications this and the following years. So I think this will make a significant impact to the plan in the future to increase accessibility and the availability of deaf and deafblind community in South Lanarkshire. I'll personally take this up with the Education Department to take this forward and promote education in all South Lanarkshire schools this year. Thank you.
Hi there. So last year, I think after meeting with yourself, we had publicised to schools the pack from Highland Council, which is really well resourced, and schools could buy in additional training as well. So I know that some of our primary schools have done that. Certainly Crosshouse Primary were using BSL as one of their languages in school, and they felt it was going really well. But I take your point about secondary in terms of qualification, so certainly I can take that back to the Education Department and look at how we do that.
I think that...
Thank you.
Hello, Grant. I think the thing about the SQA for sign language is a valuable resource for someone that's maybe wanting to do the course. Then they can put it on their CV, because if they're looking for a job and they've got that's something totally different from what most people have. And if they're looking for work in a cross-facing, that would be a really good asset to have in the armoury. I think maybe it needs to be highlighted as that for the secondary school ones, pupils especially, that it could help them in their employment applications, enhance it. I think it's down to the other thing is, Grant, and I agree with you about the communication side of it, but we had something similar with school meals, with the halal school meals, where a lot of the parents we spoke to didn't know about it. It's just down to the fact is that there's so much communication going out, and just trying to shift through it. But I think maybe my suggestion would be to once a month have a different thing that you highlight, so that way I'm talking about our social media, Tom Little, and then that way it can be highlighted, and so that people know that there's a course there. The parents might ask for it then from the primary school or the secondary school, and that would help as well. So maybe it might be a chance for a chat with Tom Little to put it on the social media.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on that point there, Hamilton School for the Deaf are actually doing BSL classes for parents. So they've started to do that. That's been rolled out. And as part of the working group that I spoke about before, we will be looking for Hamilton School for the Deaf to come on board. And we will be contacting Councillor Ferguson as well, a wee wave there, and ask him to be part of this working group. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So again, just picking up on the point of social media, the feedback that we get is that not a lot of BSL users will use or access social media, but we have been told that perhaps WhatsApp is better. So we need to look, so we will have to have conversations with corporate comms and communications around how do we actually do that, and how do we monitor, how do we manage a WhatsApp group, and how do we get people into that WhatsApp group in the first place. So there's a lot of things that we are, and this is feedback that's coming from the community that's given us sort of a lot of food for thought to do that. And again, part of the it's about promoting democracy. How do we get BSL users involved in becoming politicians? I did ask a question of the people who were attending. At that point, obviously, it was MSPs that we were looking at, and I asked the question of, would you be interested in becoming an MSP? Not particularly. And then I asked the question about, if you were, do you know where to get information? And that was a resounding no idea. So that'll come down as well, I think, to a local level. So again, we need to think about how are we promoting access to people, not just people who are BSL users, but other people who maybe have other language needs. How are we actually getting that information out? So the communication is going to be key on this. And we will have to look at that. So we are working on it. It's not an easy fix, but we are aware, and we will be looking to include some of that in our 6-year plan going forward.
Okay. Well, before my point about social media is, sorry, Grant, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. It was just a, sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry about that. It was just to say as well. You mentioned there that with regards to BSL councillors, now we are aware of one who's a Tory councillor in the Dumfries and Galloway, and he, I think he kind of, as he looked up to me, whether he did or not is a different story. He used me as a role model in the fact that he was put himself forward for council and got elected. Now, John, he's a Tory councillor in Dumfries and Galloway, so that's 2 of us. There might be more in the future. Who knows? So it's the ball is, I think, rolling, and people have been asking. I think somebody from Edinburgh has asked me to go and visit them at the charity Deaf Action. I think it was prior to the campaign. Obviously, couldn't go to give a talk to the young people because there's a lot of young people there who seem quite keen. So you never know. The numbers might and could potentially start growing. So it's putting that positive message out. It's slowly but surely.
Grant, I would say that a Conservative councillor and a SNP councillor isn't much of a role model, but what can I say? He's a friend, so he's okay.
Yeah, I'm the role model. He's not.
Well, what I meant by the social media is for someone that's not deaf, that's using it as a course to put on. That might be something that, you know, even the parents might see the benefit of that, and that was my point about that. But I think having 2 councillors is a great start. But in all seriousness, it's a great start, and I think that's a stepping stone for someone then to else come on, and as councillor then maybe go up and go for MSP or MP. So there's a voice there as well, because having Grant here, for instance, for that, it gives us a lot more in-depth knowledge and personal experience. Okay, Bert?
Chair, with your indulgence, before I say what I've got to say, I'd like to welcome Monique back there. So good to see you, Monique. I've personal experience this small. I was at hospital recently with my son, and a few years ago, and virtually nobody in the hospital could sign. And there really is a big exclusion thing for people that are deaf, and there's a vast emptiness of people. I don't know if they're willing to learn or they can learn, but if we're providing opportunities, it's got to be a good thing for people to learn sign language, Because even in social occasions, somewhere and he disappears, my son and his friends. Why? Because nobody can sign. They're sitting there and they feel excluded. So I'd like to see more inclusion than exclusion. But I know Alison for a few years now. I know you're doing well. So thanks, Chair. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Monique?
Chair. Thank you, Bert. That was very kind of you. And Grant, you're definitely my role model, not that Mo, because he thinks he's funny and he's not. I wanted, I just had a couple of points to make and a few questions. It was just to say that I felt that Grant was spot on when he talked about us having to ensure that there was an uptake on the qualifications. So I definitely think that that's something we need to make sure there is a push on. Also, Grant, if you could help me out with this, you and I had a conversation and it was to do with teachers' qualifications and it was to do with the difference between having a teaching qualification and being in the school for the deaf and actually being it wasn't a deaf teacher, but it was like a different curriculum or whatever, because I definitely took away from the conversation that you and I had, which was that in Hamilton, for the School for the Deaf, then it meant that obviously our teachers are great, but they weren't qualified the way that they could be, and that's why we've got a lot of people that go to Glasgow. I've got more things to say, but Chair, if that could be answered first by Grant, so that it gives us all an understanding that there is actually a difference.
Okay, Grant.
Thanks, Monique. Yeah, so you've got, I think, the teachers for the deaf now, and you've got, I think, interpreters for deaf as well. I think the numbers are completely different. Now, I think if you're looking in England, I think the pay structure is different. They get paid more if you're a teacher of the deaf in England. You get paid a lot more than you do if you get a teacher for the deaf in Scotland. And I think there's something there that just maybe less motivation for a teacher to become a teacher of the deaf, or somebody who is at interpreter level to become a teacher. So it seems that there's a lot more motivation in England, which doesn't seem to be the case here in Scotland now. I've contacted different, or I've been contacted by different organisations, I suppose, and parents to talk about the number of teachers for the deaf is decreasing, and nobody's doing, I think, anything about it. But that's, yeah, there's, well, obviously we'll see how that goes from here.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Grant. Maybe that's one when we're talking to the EIS about the other issues, we could also mention that to EIS as well with regards to making sure that our teachers get paid more. The other thing was, it was to do with the community consultation that Alison had touched upon. And I wanted to just say that I had a situation, it wasn't somebody that was like a small d or deaf, it was somebody that was blind. And they wrote to me to complain that they had been left out of the community consultation that was done to do with the halls closing or not closing. And when I came back from being ill and then responded to that person, they said that they had a response from the council, but it was to basically like say, yeah, if you want to come in and speak to us, like we'd be happy to speak to you. But that then made like my constituent feel more vulnerable than what they were the first time when they'd taken the time to reach out to say, I don't feel included. And they then felt the pressure was on them as like an individual, that they had to come up with a solution for the council. So I think Alison's completely correct when it comes to community consultations and us basically speaking to people, whether they're small d, whether they're, you know, large d, or whether, you know, they're blind. We need to make sure that whether it's that there's things that we need to do that's face to face, or, you know, if people don't like technology. But the other thing I was going to say was, I remember when I was speaking to the National Institute for the Blind, what they had said was that they were pretty sure that when somebody goes to the eye clinic and basically gets like signed, like, you know, like that's them, you know, they're then blind, or if I'm saying the wrong word, I completely apologise in advance, that they're partially blind, that it then means that they get the option of like going on a list, which means that they can be contacted with different things that are happening or not contacted, but it's like that's something they choose. And I think that with regards to Alison's point, we need to be making sure whether it's something that we've got to put through at council for it to go to Holyrood, or whether it's something that we can actually do through the integrated joint board, that we need to be coming up with a solution so that basically everybody's included, because there's no point in us having community consultations if we're not actually able to include everybody, because that's just wrong. And I would think that that actually goes against the Equality Act. So I think that's something that we know is a problem, but we need to actually look to solve it. And that needs to be done sooner rather than later. And my last point was with regards to Grant as a councillor. It was to say that I kind of feel as if whenever there is crossovers, Grant and I are in different wards, but there might be something happening in his ward, but it's to do with a constituent in my ward. So we've had a few things like that, and Grant has to basically, like, he has to request to have an interpreter, which means that because he always has to do that, then he's restricted, which then means he's restricted, which then restricts me, which then restricts the constituent. And I kind of feel as if we have a councillor that's deaf. So as a local authority, if this is something we're promoting and we're saying that we actually care about it, then, like, you know, I really feel as if we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to make sure that we actually have an interpreter for the deaf that basically is here working at the council. That basically means that, see, whenever Grant needs somebody and it's last minute, then it's okay. That's okay. Whereas at the moment, he is actually restricted. And it's something that I think if we don't look to put things like this in place, then it means it will put other people off that maybe don't have the same confidence level as Grant, who is a go-getter, you know, not afraid to have a laugh, puts himself out there. Not everybody's going to be as confident as Grant. So we need to make sure that we are properly representing everybody. So I would like, Chair, and I know I should probably have spoken to you about it before, so I apologise. How do we take this forward to make sure that we can actually have somebody employed that's an interpreter for the deaf? That basically means that Grant has somebody on hand, and it also means that person can be the person that is working with these different groups, which means that there's somebody that can go along and actually interpret for us as a council when they're working with the steering group, because it shouldn't be that if you're in the steering group that you know, you have to be fully hearing. You know, I just think that we need to be able to have, you know, deaf people, and we need to make sure we're representing them. So if I've said anything that wasn't PC, I apologise. It definitely wasn't my intention. So yeah, thanks.
So the question, Monique, was do we have any staff that are BSL trained?
A member of my team is a BSL user, who you've met before, Brian. And Brian has an interpreter who he works with, who is provided through Access to Work. Now, I don't think Brian would be, he may be available, but I believe Councillor Ferguson, you also have Access to Work as well, funding for an interpreter, am I right?
Yes, I do. I have got funding from Access to Work for interpreters now. There's no, I say there's no limit, but there is a limit, obviously. When I first started as a councillor, trying to book interpreters it was really difficult, and it was a huge issue. And we'd have to, you know, try and email people and get. It got really complicated. Now, well, for me, luckily, member services is come in and explained and helped, and basically they do all the bookings for me. So I send the details of, say, look, these are the dates I'm looking for, and they come back and sort it out, and they'll then book the interpreters for the dates. Now, I've felt that over the last few years that the difference has been really, really impressive, and you know, and I know that I've got no worries anymore. So what I think one of the biggest issues that we do see and challenges is about booking interpreters is obviously, as you said, Monique, earlier on, if you're looking for a date, we can't find anybody, then obviously we need to go back to find out exactly when somebody is free, and you're ending up round and round in circles, and it gets tiring. So I've got to put this on record and thank member services for all the work that they've done, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Okay. And it's been a very positive experience.
Thank you. Can I just come back in there and just pick up the point that Councillor Ferguson has made? It's very difficult sometimes to source a BSL interpreter. They are a bit like the saying goes, hen's teeth. Very difficult sometimes, and that's why we do try to go locally as far as possible so that we can have interpreters available to us. But sometimes there just isn't anybody that's available. So I'm not sure about the employing somebody. They might want to. A lot of the interpreters are they're self-employed, and that might be through a choice that they have. But I don't know. But I do know that there is a big shortage on interpreters, and interpreters that are trained to a level that they're able just to pick up any topics that might be required.
Okay.
Chair.
Ask Grant. Grant's got his hand up.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alison. You're just what I've been finding out is that, especially from the councillor in Dumfries and Galloway, they've taken in a full-time interpreter, and I was really surprised about that, to be honest, because they have employed. Now, what the reason is, what their reasons are, I'm not actually 100% sure, but I do know that Dumfries and Galloway isn't the central belt. There's a huge shortage of interpreters, as you mentioned earlier on, especially in that area, because it's so rural. It's really difficult to get interpreters. They were getting interpreters from here to having to drive the 2 hours, 90 minutes, whatever it is, down for an hour's meeting to come back up again. And it's really difficult to get interpreters to actually do that. So I think one of maybe the other reasons to get, I think that's maybe the reason that why they have employed one, because of the lack of interpreters locally to Dumfries and Galloway.
Chair.
Yes, Monique.
Hi. It was just to say that I think like Alison answers the point, and with Grant's comments as well, that shows that we are trying to put something in place so that we don't have anybody that's disadvantaged, or we're trying to make sure that there's anybody that's disadvantaged in any way, that we can actually put a stop to it. We've heard from one of our own, Grant, that basically how difficult it has actually been, and that basically member services, and hats off to them, for taking things on and doing what they can to help Grant. But at the end of the day, it's just like, that is brilliant, they've done it, but I don't know how to say this. It's like Grant shouldn't feel grateful. He should have the same rights as everybody else. So basically, it's like, for him to be able to do his job, he needs an interpreter. That's it. One of the reasons why this has been brought up is because there's been such an excellent report done, and so very thorough. So, hats off to our officers. But again, it is actually pointing out the fact that that's why there is such a need for us to be encouraging this in school, and for people to get the qualifications, because there's not enough people. So it's just like that authority have taken it on the chin and said, right, we need somebody for our councillor, because we don't want him to feel disadvantaged in any way. And what I'm saying is, I don't want our councillor, Grant, to feel disadvantaged in any way, because I would hate that it would be, you know, he would decide that actually it's too much hassle, and yeah, he is grateful to member services, but you know, he's not going to like stand again or whatever, because then it means that we lose somebody that's a valuable member of the community, that's actually able to express needs that basically somebody that's fully hearing can only try, you know, and imagine and get across. So how do we take it forward so that we can look to get an interpreter, which means that Grant has somebody, and I know that Alison mentioned, I can't remember, is it something like full access or access to something?
Access to what?
But basically, like Brian has a different job to Grant, so that might be something that works for him. But for Grant, he has clearly said that it is something that can be actually really difficult. And I would hate for it to ever go against him, because he's disadvantaged by not having somebody. So we've got a deaf counsellor. Let's make sure that our deaf counsellor, you know, basically, I mean, what's the point in us having papers like this if we're not actually going to support our own? So I think the first thing we should be doing is getting an interpreter for Grant, which makes it easy then for him to do his job. And then when that interpreter's not there, then that means that that interpreter could also help Brian, you know, as well. Because Brian's in the same situation as Grant.
I think that there's a bigger picture as well. I think there's a bigger picture as well, because we could have some constituents that could be phoning in and looking for an interpreter as well. So I think this is a bigger question, and I think it'd probably be something that we probably need to investigate and have a look at, and say that it's not just Brian, it's not just Grant, but it's also the constituents or that are needing this service. So is it feasible to maybe get someone full time for all three? That would tick all the boxes.
Oops, thank you. Thanks. I think probably speaking generally about interpretation services, and then if there's maybe any sort of individual situations, we could probably take them offline. I think in terms of interpretation services, particularly given the size and scale of our council and our community, the reason why we tap into interpretation services is it allows us to step up and down services for BSL, different languages, different services that we've got across the council, because some of that can be a bit unknown and it can change on a day-to-day basis just in terms of access and need. So we tend to do that generally, but if there's anything specific that we need to pick up, or more generally, certainly we can explore what Dumfries and Galloway have done in terms of funding and sourcing, and the kind of logic and reasons behind that in terms of their community makeup as well and their situation. So we'll certainly take a few points that we can follow up after the meeting, and certainly provide feedback on that.
Okay.
Just to say that we can take things back, but we can't
Make a decision, yes. Yes, I understand. What's been pointed out is that we can't make a decision, but we can take it back and ask for this to be investigated and then brought forward. Okay, I think the other one was about the person that was blind, about the consultation. I think that question's not really been answered. Is it possible to have a look at that to see, rather than the person coming in and someone going to the person to answer to fill in the consultation forms, because I think that would be more appropriate rather than the other way around. But again, this is all on hearsay, but it would be good to have a procedure.
Yes, I'll take that back and see if I can find out some more information about that. If Councillor McAdam has anything that would help to look at that situation, if she could pass it on to me, then that would be appreciated.
Excellent, Monique.
Alison, I'll contact you about that, and so that it means, and I'll show you the correspondence, so you'll be able to kind of see, you know, where the person was coming from. And the other thing that I would say, Michelle, is that with regards to looking at the last point, with regards to the access and need, it's, you know, when you've got Grant's he's not going to just next week become not deaf, so he's in for 5 years, therefore it would be a job for somebody for 5 years. So unlike other people that for whatever their need is, that, you know, if they've got a broken leg, it's then going to fix, or whatever else. His need would be for the 5 years. So if that can be taken into account when you're looking into stuff, then that would be brilliant. And thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. I think it'll be more 3.5 years now. Okay. Okay. That was for noting. Has everyone agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I think we when I spoke to Elizabeth on the pre-meeting, I said this is going to be quite a quick meeting. I don't think that's been the case. I think it's been absolutely, really pleased with the discussions and the scope of the discussions, and I think it shows you that this Equal Opportunities Forum is working. So I'd like to thank the officers for all the reports and the feedback as well. The date for the next meeting is 11th of December, and there's no urgent business, so I'll close this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.